Welcome back, everyone, once again to another SnowRunner video. Today, we're going to continue the truck request series from this comment right here on screen, showing the nomination of the Royal BM17 and all the upvotes of people who wanted to see this as well. It was a very close race between this and the CK1500, but as of recording this video here on Friday morning, the BM17 edged it out. So thank you guys so much for the participation. Please leave a comment on this video down in the comments section on what truck you would like to see next in the truck request series, and the most upvoted comment will be the next one we feature. Also, before we start, guys, thank you guys so much for all the likes on the videos, the comments, and also the hype button if you're going to hype up the channel. I actually wanted to show where the hype button is. It's on the mobile app. It's on screen right now. You basically, where the like button is and stuff like that, you basically would swipe right there, and then you would see the hype button come up. Sometimes it might not be available in certain countries. I don't know. It's a new thing for YouTube. The deal is, if we break the top 100 hype videos on YouTube in a 7-day period, I will do a 10-hour season 16 stream for you guys as an appreciation to multiple platforms, YouTube, Twitch, and also perhaps Kick. So we'll see about that. All right, now that that's out of the way, the next order of process is I wanted to just come out and say again, these are not reviews. If you would like to see my formal review on any vehicle in the whole game right now up to season 16, please go to the channel. There is a actual playlist for those. You can look at those. There's detailed pros and cons. Also, there's a lot of imagery, a lot of things that I put in the back end to make those videos. They took a very long time to make. And to be quite honest, my views on a lot of these vehicles have not changed because I've just put so much work into them. Moving forward here with the garage tour on the Royal BM17. This is a truck you find in Northport, Alaska. You basically roll up on it, you discover it. It is completely, I wouldn't say completely, it's almost all the way broken down. Now, in hard mode or in a challenge mode, which were one of my first videos on YouTube, you can drive this thing out of its location, essentially. All you have to do is just basically give it fuel from whatever vehicle you roll up on it, and you can essentially drive it out. You're going to have some issues driving it out of the area, but you can do it. I've done it. I've actually done it a couple of times, and it will drive out on its own. So it's very impressive that it will do that in a broken down state on highway tires and going through all those areas back there where it's actually found. So that part kind of made me look at the BM17 in a new light when I found out it could do that, but it does have its issues. And I'm not going to totally get into all those things. Maybe here I will try to discuss those more in the driving portion and my overall thoughts against how it stacks up against other trucks, but I'll probably drop some hints here and there on this garage tour section of what I think with certain add-ons and stuff like that, and also some things I noted on my review. Engine sets, it has quite a bit of engine sets, and this is the vehicle actually, when I started my hard mode series, I was actually late to the game when starting hard mode, to be honest, because I was one of those people who just held out. I didn't feel, and I'm actually right about this, because when hard mode came out, I thought to myself, this is not making the game harder, it's just making me be more efficient and more logistical, which essentially, to me, I was already doing, and it was just essentially another playthrough. And that's kind of the reason I held back from starting hard mode when it first dropped. And then I kind of caved in, and yeah, and then you guys see that, you know, we have hard mode series all over the channel right now, which it's fun, but it essentially at some point it's not really a challenge, I think, to be quite fair. It's just more a logistical thing, and it kind of makes everything just longer, to be quite honest. So I think I actually have a little bit more fun playing normal mode nowadays, just because it's almost the same thing, other than you're just paying a little bit of money for everything else. So, but on hard mode, whenever I started out, I was thinking I want to be as efficient as possible. And that's kind of where I was looking into this vehicle when I bought it. And I was like, wow, he has all these engines. Maybe we'll do some downgrading and see if I can max perform with just fuel consumption, especially in places where you don't require a lot of exertion on hill climbing with load. And that would be Alaska, actually. And that's kind of like my little rant about Alaska is I think they did Alaska pretty dirty. Alaska is a very rugged place. If you live in the continental United States and you've been to Alaska, it's a very rugged place. I've been there quite a bit in my military service. I wish that Alaska was as hard as some of the other or I would say hilly, have a lot of different topography like other maps, or like maybe Amur or other maps like Yukon, stuff like that, to give it a representation of what Alaska should be. Truthfully, Alaska in the game of SnowRunner is actually really easy compared to, I think it's easier than, oh gosh, Michigan, I guess. I do. I think it's easier than Michigan, to be quite honest. So in areas like that, where there's a lot of large networks of roads and things like that, there's not a lot of topography to pull up hills and stuff like that. A couple areas here and there, but in the majority of pulling cargo, the grades are very low. And something I was doing was I was trying to see if I could get better fuel performance and save fuel more by using downgraded engines. And this is something I experimented with in the BM17. And I came to my conclusion after this region that it really wasn't worth it, because I think I was actually overstacking, overloading, and then from switching these engines, and just eyeballing my fuel performance on the meter, I wasn't seeing a ton of difference that would make me just straight up choose less power efficiency over more power, less efficiency. So I think that rather than doing this, there's a lot of trucks that you can do this. I mentioned this on my video of whether you should use power or efficiency. It's a video I just made. You guys can go check that out. Most of the time, it's going to be power. There are cases where you can actually not use power, and a lot of those cases are trucks that have very high power to weight, like Scouts, and also smaller 4x4s, stuff like that, Step 310 Echo, things like that. But anyways, 192,000 torque, I think this is a pretty good option to use. I would probably use it because the vehicle itself definitely weighs a little bit more than others in its class, which I think is a good thing. Here is where I want to talk about the high range versus the off-road. Never use the fine tune. Please don't do this to yourself. Balanced if you like to not have a high gear, which I don't know why people wouldn't want a high gear when you understand what it does. But hey, if you want to use the balance, use the balance. It's your game. I don't even know why that's even equipped or even bought. Anyways, this is the test map garage, so we don't have the garage music right now. High range can get you some really fast speeds. This is one of the faster trucks in the game, period. I don't know why, but it rolls pretty fast. 51-inch tires are huge. We'll talk about that here in a second. I tend to use the off-road still, even though there is no diff lock. And it's weird, you don't have to. High range gearbox will basically make you run like a madman in this thing. 51-inch tires is great. One thing I do want to say is why I don't choose to use the high range gearbox despite having a race suspension here in 51-inch tires is you get running so fast, you have so much overhang on this front end. And I noted this on my review, is this is all mapped right here. So you will violently strike terrain and upend your truck. And this is something you have to be cognizant of, is because a lot of areas in SnowRunner, you can't just open up high range and just crack it wide open and fly, because there's a lot of up and down movements, rocks and stuff like that. And you can smack this. This is mapped out in the terrain. I mean, in the collision mesh. Speaking of collision mesh, I don't want to say it's favorable, but I definitely think it's not that bad, to be honest. It runs around like here-ish, and then also about like here, which is still, I think, pretty decent for a base game vehicle. So there is that. But the main issue with this truck is at fast speeds, you can have some violent collisions and you will upset yourself. So that's why I choose to use the off-road. When I choose to use the off-road, there's 3 gears that you essentially want to be in at all times because you don't have a differential lock. And when you don't have a diff lock, sometimes if you're in low or low minus, wheels will not spin. Well, when wheels are not spinning, you're not propelling yourself forward. They're essentially just dead axles. So low plus will force power, high will force power, and auto will force power, because auto is essentially first gear. So those are 3 gears that I mainly try to stay in, is low plus, auto, and high. Those will force power to your axles and make those move. That is how you get around a no diff lock. And that's kind of where I will leave that. Race suspension, I always tend to use it if I'm using a saddle. If you're not using a saddle, you probably could downgrade and use the 47-inch tires. 51s are pretty nice, especially for, a non-Eastern European vehicle. So it has a medium UODs, I will probably choose the Jats just because we know the lateral stability of this truck is kind of questionable. The CG, I believe, sits in the front end, like right around here-ish. So it's not super low. I think the balance is a little more trending to the CG that's actually in its frame. I think by maybe 55%, and I think more or less so. I think there's a weight up here in its cab with no negative offset. So that is probably a reason why people find this truck tippy. Winches, standard. Spare tire, I probably won't use it because I don't want it to drag underneath. Wedge cap, I think it looks okay. I don't really like how it sits though. You can get through some crossings just because the height of this, so you're okay with there. And then we come to the last part of the garage tour, essentially is your add-ons. It has a plethora of them. It's tough to utilize most of its add-ons simply because of its stability. That's really the root cause of all these things. It's great that it has all these add-ons, but it's tough to use it if you're not a good driver. If you can handle the Fleet Star, like I mentioned in that review, basically that's like the baseline truck that you can just measure things against, right? It's the first thing you find. That's kind of what you build off of. It's also bouncy. It's also notably unstable, especially with load, right? Now, if you're good at driving the Fleet Star, you have no worries here. None at all. But adding these add-ons on a truck that's already, I think, notably unstable, and then you put on weight on top as well, increasing your CG vertical load or your vertical CG point, you're going to have issues, right? So in my opinion, because I know this truck is unstable, it has big tires, I always default to using a low saddle. But then here's the other problem. On the other hand is it doesn't even have good saddle placements. And it collides. This is a low saddle. This is probably a position where a high saddle should be in most trucks, right? This probably should be slid back in between both these axles. And then this should probably disappear. And then you probably wouldn't have as much collision because this will collide. Even with the new season 15 trailers, you don't have much of an angle when going over slopes until that catches and picks up your front end, and you just lose steering until you actually release to get back down to actually contact the ground with the front tires. So that is a huge issue with the BM17. High saddle is even farther up in conjunction with the crane. So you probably will have some type of collision here depending on what trailer you're using. So I probably wouldn't ever use high saddle there. I probably would just use low. But I also would be cognizant of where I'm deploying this vehicle. In places like Alaska, I would say maybe Michigan, not necessarily as much like Smithville Dam, but like Island Lake, Black River, places like that, which if you're playing chronologically, you're already done with those. But Alaska and parts of Tamir and stuff like that, where it's not super hilly, this is not going to be much of an issue. But when you're going over those bumps and it's picking up your front end because, yeah, you're hauling a load, it's going to be quite annoying. But the good thing is you can actually still create angles to make the truck stable from having the trailer and stuff like that. I actually mentioned that on prior videos. So if you'd like to check that stuff out, it's that's there for you. But that essentially is the garage tour. The BM17 has issues with pretty much all areas of cargo loading. There's no way to get around it. It is a vehicle that you essentially have to work around. And if you like using it, I think it definitely makes you a better player because it can troll you a little bit. But I will say that for not having diff lock, its performance is pretty good and it's definitely really fast. So let's get into the driving portion of the video and we'll talk further about a little bit how I feel it stacks up here in 2025, moving on to 2026, and how it stacks up in its class. If I'm going to give you the hard truth on the BM17, it's basically as follows. The truck itself is unstable, it doesn't have differential locking, and also its saddle positions are absolutely trash. So in some way, it has no identity on what its speciality is or what it's actually good at compared to a lot of trucks in its class. Yes, it has 51-inch tires, has a good engine, but also those things I just mentioned put it much farther behind a lot of other trucks that you would tend to use moreover than the BM17. Now, Don't get me wrong here, if you want a good challenge, which we have done this stuff on stream with using lesser trucks for challenges and stuff like that, the BM17 will give you that challenge. And I will tell you this, if you like more cerebral gameplay versus relaxed gameplay, the BM17 will give you that, I promise you. If you're one that likes relaxed gameplay, this is probably not for you because it will wear you out. Your attention to detail, as you're probably seeing in this video, is I'm constantly fighting this vehicle to stay on its wheels with medium logs here. You see, I'm winching left and right to stop my tips. I'm turning in and out to catch myself from tipping over, turning into my tips, hitting ruts a certain way so I don't actually unbalance the truck, watching where my tire placement is striking rocks. All these things I'm constantly doing. And you're most likely seeing me spin the camera left and right really quick. And this is very different than how I usually present whenever I play a game or I'm recording footage for voiceover and stuff like that. Is I am literally playing this to keep it on its wheels. It's kind of like how you would see me drive on stream. I'm constantly shifting my view from left to right because I want to know how my truck is going to strike this terrain on this specific area. So I'm constantly swinging my camera, trying to get information to basically keep it on its wheels. So if you're seeing the rapid camera movement, that's pretty much why is I'm fighting the vehicle a lot. And it's just because I don't trust the vehicle to stay on its wheels. So I have to put more of what I know about off-roading and keeping a truck on its wheels to essentially get it to produce a video that you guys can watch driving. But you can see this, that I'm fighting it here. And I will say after this, it has been pretty exhausting to drive for just the short duration of this video. So how would I propose buffing the BM17? I don't want to go on this slippery slope of saying that we should buff every truck that I talk about to a certain level. I think that is a slippery slope that basically will make every truck in the game too similar to the next. So it's tough to say what I would buff with this vehicle. A couple things would probably be at least its saddle locations to, I would say, at least be somewhat favorable or comparable to other vehicles in its class, because the vehicle itself hauling on frame with a sideboard bed is not a super viable way unless you're just really adept at driving. And I don't think a lot of people really are with this vehicle, which is why it's probably left on the shelf most of the time. And then also hauling low saddle, they're just better trucks with better saddle positions for that. So that's probably one change I would add. Another thing, if it's going to be unstable and they're not going to change the stability on it, at least give it maybe a gearbox to be super efficient. So maybe the truck it doesn't have the greatest heavy tires. They are big. The truck is unstable, but maybe it will just be an efficient truck that you could use, but it has its downsides. Things like that. I don't think that every truck should rise up to the level that the trucks that we're getting. I don't think that's the case, because you have to have vehicles in the game that are bad to know what a good vehicle is. And I don't want to get into this continuation where I'm just saying, hey, we should upgrade the old trucks and make them on par with the new trucks. I don't think that. I think small changes for quality of life is kind of the direction I would take. Now, how does this vehicle stack up in its class? Well, pretty much since every tier list I've put out, I've never ranked this thing above a B-. And I think that's where it stays. It is a little bit of a bias that I even put it in the B class, because instability is a huge thing that is a deterrent for people. And I put it in the B because, well, it has good power, has big tires, and that's pretty much it. And it can be efficient, and it can be very rapid. A lot of ways I don't think it deserves a higher ranking is its front overhang, instability, and overall not being able to handle all of its add-ons as given, because you can throw all the add-ons in the world at a truck, that still doesn't make it versatile if it can't utilize those and actually get the mission done. So the BM17 is in this weird place, but those proposed changes that I proposed just a minute ago are the ones I think could help promote people coming back to using it. But I don't think we should just change this vehicle outright to make it on par with something like a Tega, a Voron, or those up there, because you have to have mid-tiers. You can't have every truck being crazy strong, right? So in 2026, the BM17 moving forward, I'm going to be real, if no changes are made, it's probably still going to sit in the lower mid tier based upon a player being able to keep it on its wheels, similar to that I talked about with the Western Star 6900 twin steer. If you are adept at keeping a truck on its wheels and you like that immersive gameplay, the fast twitch responses of, you know, shifting your weight back and forth, because there's a lot of that right now in this video. If that's your playstyle, the BM17 is your pick. So with that being said, guys, leave a comment on the next base game truck you would like to see next in the series, and the most upvoted comment will be the one we feature next. Thank you guys so much for the support. It's been great. Hit that hype button and like button if you've enjoyed this video and the channel has been helpful for you. So I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video and possibly learned a few things along the way as well. So until next time, God bless and stay upright.